Joseph, the chair of the SSPA task force for Lee District. Thank you all for joining us. As usual, I have this boring script I've got to go through to authorize us to meet online this way. So please bear with me while I go through this, and then we can get into the meat of the meeting. So to conduct this meeting wholly electronically and to effectuate both the emergency procedures authorized by the Freedom of Information Act and the Emergency Ordinance, the Lee District SSPA Task Force needs to make certain findings and determinations for the record. First, because each member of the task force is participating in this meeting from a separate location, we must verify that a quorum of members is participating and that each member's voice is clear, audible, and at an appropriate volume for all other members. Accordingly, I'm going to conduct a roll call and ask each task force member participating in this meeting to state your name and the location from which you are participating. And of course, it is sufficient to just say you're participating from home. I ask that each of you pay close attention to ensure that you can hear each of your colleagues. Following this roll call, we will vote to establish that every member can hear every other member. So I will now call the roll. Robert Livingstone.
Robert Livingstone, home.
Thank you. Carol Allam.
Carol Allam at home.
Thank you. Rand Pixa.
Rand Pixa at home in Claremont Woods.
Thank you. Pamela Piñeros. I don't remember seeing Pamela's name. Are you with us, Pamela? Or Leslie Hatch, the alternate? Okay, moving on. Leolanda Skidmore.
Leolanda Skidmore from home.
Thank you. Larry Dempsey.
At home.
Could you state your name, Larry?
Larry Dempsey, at home.
Thank you. Jane Kelly. I think Jane was going to try to join us from an airport, if I remember right. She doesn't seem to be here. John Schaefer. John Schaefer, are you with us? Moving on, Jeff Safel.
Jeffrey Safel, Island Creek, I'm here, so is Sona.
All right, hello, Sona. Tom Rickert.
Tom Rickert, at home.
Thank you. Cindy Potter. Didn't see her name. Or alternate Jay Dick. Moving on, Jim Drinkard.
Jim Drinkard at home.
Thank you. Rosemary Clay. I don't believe Rosemary is with us. Or alternate Liz Murphy. Liz, are you there? I don't think so. Moving on. Holly Doherty.
Hi, Ed. This is Holly Doherty.
Where are you participating from?
I am in Mesa, Arizona.
Mesa, Arizona. Good for you. All right.
Yeah, it's only 107 right now.
Well, that's cool, apparently, compared to some other places from what I'm hearing.
Holly, it's a dry heat, right?
It is dry heat. That is true.
Moving on. Don Tennant. Are you with us, Don? I did not see his name. Carl Sell. Are you with us, Carl? Did not see Carl's name. Marta Morrissey.
Marta Morrissey, Cooperstown, New York.
All right, go to the Hall of Fame for me, please.
You bet.
Thank you. Steve Levinson.
Steve Levinson in beautiful downtown Springfield at home.
All right. Thank you. Tom Sachs.
Tom Sachs at home.
Hello, Tom. Thank you. Jim McCracken. Okay, I don't remember seeing Jim's name. Jim, are you there? Or alternates Juliana Sharp or Rachel Dexter? Okay, moving on. John Tomko.
John Tomko, home.
Thank you. Richard Dresner. I know Richard's not with us. Jonna Gagnon.
John Gannon, home.
All right, so that's the end of the roll. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. We have made our quorum. Very good. So at this point, I will pass the gavel to our Vice Chair, Tom Sachs, so that I may be heard to make certain motions.
Are there any motions from the floor?
Oddly enough, yes, there are. I move that each member's voice may be adequately heard by each other, by each other member of the Lead District SSPA Task Force.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 The motion has, I guess I need to ask, any opposed? Abstention? Are there any other motions from the floor?
Yes, there are. Well, moving on. Second, having established that each member's voice may be heard by every other member, we must next establish the nature of the emergency that compels these emergency procedures, the fact that we are meeting electronically, what type of electronic communication is being used, and how we have arranged for public access to the meeting. Therefore, I move that the state of emergency caused by the COVID-19 pandemic makes it unsafe for the task force to physically assemble and unsafe for the public to physically attend any such meeting. And that as such, the Freedom of Information Act's usual procedures, which require the physical assembly of the task force and the physical presence of the public, cannot be implemented safely or practically. I further move that the task force may conduct this meeting electronically through a dedicated video and audio conferencing line, and that the public may access this meeting by registering through the meeting link on the Track a Plan Amendment page of the SSPA website at https://www.fairfaxcounty.gov/plan-amendment, or by calling 1-844-621-3956-TTY711 and entering the access code 173-216-4960. It is so moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
In favor?
Aye.
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 Yes.
All opposed? Any abstentions? The motion is carried.
And there's going to be a test later on. I'm going to ask everyone to try to repeat that web address. Right. Finally, it is next required that all the matters addressed on today's agenda must address the emergency itself, are necessary for continuity in Fairfax County government, and are statutorily required or necessary to continue operations and the discharge of the Lead District SSPA Task Force's lawful purposes, duties, and responsibilities. As always, I'm sorry, skip the page. I therefore move that this meeting must be conducted online during the current emergency in order to discharge the lawful purposes, duties, and responsibilities of the Lee District SSPA Task Force.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion is carried.
Thank you, Tom. I'll take back the virtual gavel. Tonight, we will first consider whether or not to adopt the roles and responsibilities document, which has been provided to each task force member as our rules going forward in this implementation phase of the SSPA process. After an opportunity for discussion among the members of the task force, I will entertain a motion to adopt these as our rules. Next, we will begin our consideration of the Vandoorne TSA proposed amendment to the comprehensive plan as authorized for our consideration by the Board of Supervisors. This incorporates the areas along Oakwood Road covered by the two nominations considered by us in the screening phase, as well as additional adjacent land areas, including the area which may someday accommodate a bridge over the Beltway connecting Oakwood Road to Vine Street and therefore providing access to the Vandoorne Street Metro Station. David Stinson of county staff will be presenting on this tonight. After his discussion, the floor will be open to questions and comments from the public and then from members of the task force. Before we begin our agenda tonight, I want to inform the task force that since our last meeting, the Board of Supervisors has authorized us to consider the proposed amendment for Brandon Avenue. So we will be taking up that proposed amendment at future meetings. As always, interested members of the public are encouraged to provide us with their comments. The time for public comments during meetings is limited by the need to take care of our business. This will vary from meeting to meeting, depending on the time available. I expect to be able to devote about 20 minutes to the public comments tonight, depending on how things go. Public comments can always be submitted for the consideration of the task force by email at leedist@fairfaxcounty.gov. That's LEEDIST @fairfaxcounty.gov. Before each Monday meeting, and our meetings are always on Mondays, comments received by the preceding Friday at 10 a.m. will be distributed to the task force members prior to the meeting on Monday. With that, let's proceed to consideration of the roles and responsibilities. Does anyone have any comments or questions about that?
John Tomko. I move that we adopt.
Yes, John.
I move that we adopt the roles and responsibilities for meeting procedures as written.
John again, and I'll second.
Thank you. Does anybody feel a need for a discussion, or should we move right to a vote?
Vote.
Somebody just said something. I'm not sure who that was or what the content was. Does anyone wish to speak on this before we vote? Okay, hearing no one, let's.
Ed, I have a question.
Go ahead. Who is this? Tom?
It's Tom. Yeah, I mean, I haven't had time to totally digest this and compare and contrast it with our previous, petition. Does anyone feel like this limits us in any way that we were not limited before? Hearing nothing, I guess not. Okay. So that asks and answers. Right. Thank you.
Anybody?
This is John. I
you.
didn't see anything that was much different. Now, Graham, am I missing it? Was there anything in here that significantly changed in our format or running of the meetings? I didn't see anything that changed. Except the dates of our meetings, but
No. Yeah,
Date-
it's
dates. Go ahead, Ed.
tracking
Sorry.
the same process.
I think the
All right.
biggest change, and it's very minor, is just the terminology used throughout, but in terms of the task force's role, it is looking at whether or not the task force will consider a comprehensive plan amendment as opposed to screening for inclusion on the work program, which was the prior task of the task force when we met last fall. So that's the biggest change of substance. But beyond that, procedurally, it's all virtually the same.
Okay. Does anyone else have any other questions or comments before we move to a vote? Okay, hearing nothing, let's proceed to a vote. One moment. All right, so I will call the roll, and I will ask each member who is present to answer either yes, if you agree to adopt this document as our rules, or no, if you oppose it, or of course you're always free to abstain. So starting down the roll, Robert Livingstone.
Yes.
Thank you. Carol Allen.
Yes.
Rand Pixa.
Yes.
Leah Lambert Skidmore.
Yes.
Larry Dempsey.
Yes.
Jeff Seffel.
Yes.
Tom Rickert.
Yes.
Jim Drinkard.
Yes.
Holly Doherty.
Yes.
Marta Morrissey.
Yes.
Steve Levinson.
Yes.
Tom Sachs. Tom?
Did you hear me? Yes.
I could not hear you, no.
Yes.
You're voting yes. Okay. Thank you. John Tomko
Yes.
and Jonna Gannon.
yes, yes.
I think I mispronounced it one way or another. Okay. So that's unanimous. 14 in favor, none opposed, no abstentions. Thank you.
Ed, I was just going to
All
let you
right.
know that Pamela has joined since the roll call as well.
Really? Okay. Pamela, you're there?
Yes, I am.
Okay. So I will mark you as present. Very good. Thank you. Okay. So now we are ready to move toward consideration of the Vandoorne TSA proposed amendment, and we will hear a presentation from David Stinson of staff. David, I assume you're there somewhere. I think I saw your name. Please take it away.
Here. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we
We
can.
can hear you. We can hear you.
Okay, let me pull up the presentation. So just bear with me. All right, can everyone see my slide?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay. So again, I'm David Stenson with the Department of Planning and Development, and before you is the agenda of the topics we plan to cover this evening. I will begin with providing an overview of the Vandoorne TSA, followed by the county's transit-oriented development policies and the existing conditions and adopted plan recommendations for the individual land units within the TSA. I'll also provide a brief overview of the history, transportation, the environmental conditions, public facilities serving the TSA, the subject area amendment, and the board authorization. I will close with a question and answer session. At the next meeting, we will also begin to discuss more staff analysis. I just wanted to make a note of that. The Vandoorne transit station area is located south of the Fairfax County and Alexandria boundary. It is bounded by the CSX Railroad and Metro tracks to the north, the South Vandoorne and the Beltway interchange to the west, and residential areas consisting of single-family homes to the south and east. The Vandoorne Metro Station is located on the northern boundary of the transit station area, which is also the Alexandria and Fairfax County boundary. And although the station platform is located within Fairfax County, the actual station facilities and entrances are located within the city of Alexandria. The goal of the Vandoorne TSA is to provide opportunities for transit-oriented development and a more pedestrian-oriented development pattern. As indicated on the map, the Vandoorne TSA is divided into 5 land units, and a mix of 1.0 FAR is planned for a land unit B and D. The area along Vine Street, land unit B, which is right north of the Beltway, is actually envisioned as the focal point of the TSA, and it has the greatest because it has the greatest visibility and access to the metro station. Next, I'm going to provide a brief overview of Fairfax County's transit-oriented development policies. Transit-oriented development is a planning strategy to reduce sprawl and automobile dependency by focusing medium to high density growth around transit stations. Fairfax County policy encourages transit-oriented development around metro stations. There are 14 transit station areas in Fairfax County, and the goal for these areas is to support metro by encouraging a mix of uses, compact and pedestrian friendly development pattern within walking distance of the station. These 14 transit station areas encompass metro stations and are directly influenced by the presence of access points to the metro system. Within the region, metro provides a vital public transportation choice that enhances accessibility and reduces the reliance upon single occupant vehicle use. Transit station area boundaries are strongly shaped by the area's access and characteristics and the relationship of each station to the surrounding neighborhoods. Appendix 11 in the land use section of the Fairfax County Plan includes 16 principles for transit-oriented development within Fairfax County. Now, here objective 16 in the land use section of the Fairfax County Policy Plan refers to transit-oriented development policy. This objective encourages transit-oriented development by focusing growth near the planned and existing rail transit stations to create opportunities for compact and pedestrian-oriented development. Additionally, the county has transit-oriented development guidelines that provide recommendations to guide planning efforts around metro stations, which are found in Appendix 11 of the land use section of the policy plan. And I'll just summarize some of the important points from these guidelines. Generally, density and intensity should be concentrated closest to the metro station, while the guidelines acknowledge there should be flexibility within the particulars for each station. Land use should be mixed to ensure the efficient use of transit, and in particular, encouraging both peak and off-peak ridership and different types of activity throughout the day. The mix of uses should encourage an employment base, affordable housing, commercial revitalization, and any phasing should be done in a way to ensure a mix of uses. Finally, the pace of development should be balanced with infrastructure. All right, next I'll move on and review the land units within the Vandoorne TSA. As stated previously, the TSA is divided into 5 land units, and the next set of slides will provide an overview of the land units, which will include the existing conditions and adopted plan recommendations. Land Unit D is the location of the nominations, and it's approximately 33 acres and is located east of South Vandoorne Street and south of the Beltway. It is developed with industrial uses and residential buildings that have been converted to office. It is planned at a base level for industrial office use up to 0.25 FAR on the north side of Oakwood Road and up to 0.5 FAR on the south side of Oakwood Road. If roadway and transit access is improved, then a mix of office, hotel, retail uses up to a 1.0 FAR may be considered. Residential development may also be considered as a component of this mixed-use development if phasing requirements and noise mitigation requirements are met. I'll provide more detail about the phasing requirements later in the presentation. All right, Land Unit E consists of approximately 77 acres and is located east of Land Unit D and south of the Beltway, and is also part of the authorized plan amendment. The southern portion of this land unit is planned and developed with single-family dwelling units at 2 to 3 dwelling units per acre. The northern portion of this land unit is vacant and is planned for office at a base level of 0.3 FAR and 0.5 FAR with consolidation. The southern portion of this land unit that is developed with residential neighborhoods does not have vehicular access to the remainder of the TSA, and the adopted plan recommends that this condition remains.
David, this is
Yes.
Clara Johnson, also with Department of Planning and Development. I think I just wanted to clarify what I think everybody already knows, that it's just the northern portion, that vacant portion, that's a part of the subject property. I don't remember if you said. So go on.
Oh, well, yeah, thank you for
Just clarification, what northern portion, this is John again, what northern portion are you talking about there?
Can you see my cursor right here? This parcel right here along the top.
So it's up against the Beltway, the 95 Beltway there. You're not talking about where the D and the E are.
And the D also. D is the plan amendment, and then this portion of Land Unit E right here.
Okay, just that part that's that doesn't have any blocks put in it right now. Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
Right. So we're only talking about, as on Land Unit D, we're only talking about the undeveloped portion of that, correct?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Okay. Well, the remainder of the TSA is not part of the authorized plan amendment, and it consists of Land Unit A, B, and C, as well as the residential portion of Land Unit E, which is also not part of this plan amendment. Land Unit A consists of 6 acres and is located south and west of the South Vandoorne Street, between the CSX and Metro tracks and the Beltway. The adopted plan states a portion of this land unit may be needed for future interchange improvements to the South Vandoorne Street and Beltway interchange. However, it should be noted that this interchange improvement project is not designed, nor is it funded. The adopted plan recommends a base level of development with light industrial up to 0.25 FAR for this land unit, and there's an option for up to 1.0 FAR that may be considered if certain conditions are met. Land Unit B, which is approximately 26 acres and located east of South Vandoorne Street between the CSX Metro tracks and the Capitol Beltway, which is right here. And as stated previously, this land unit is envisioned as the focal point of the transit station area, as it has the greatest visibility and access to the metro station. This land unit currently consists of industrial uses along Vine Street and is planned for industrial uses up to 0.5 FAR at the base level. However, there's also an option of office and mixed-use development up to 1.0 FAR if certain conditions are met. If a connection is created across the Beltway to Oakwood Road in Land Unit D, then there's an option for an FAR above a 1.0 FAR. It also should be noted that the South Vandoorne and Beltway interchange improvements may be located in the western portion of this land unit. Finally, we have land unit C, which is approximately 3 acres, and it's located west of South Vandoorne Street and south of the Beltway. It is planned for hotel use and is currently developed with the Comfort Inn. And now, before we move on, does anyone have any questions about the adopted comprehensive plan?
Yeah, David, could you tell me again the acreage for land unit B, please?
Certainly. Land unit, let me just grab my notes. Land unit B is approximately 26 acres.
Thank you.
David, I had a question. You just said that land unit B currently has the, with the bridge, it's currently 1.0 FAR, but with the bridge, it could be above 1.0. How much above?
Right now, the adoptive plan does not specify specific guidance.
Okay, thank you.
David, this is David Gill. I'm the nominator for portion of land unit D there, and I do think it's worth identifying for everyone the difference between the two particular nominations in subunit D. I mean, A, B, and C are not part of this study, nor were they nominated. I think it's very helpful as far as background, but understanding what portion of our property D was part of the nomination versus the remainder, I do think is important because of ownership and current zoning circumstances.
Thanks, David. And I'll just ask David Stinson. Thanks, David Gill. David Stinson, could we review that when I think we talk about the entitlement and we get into more detail in land unit D? I think that would be a good time to do that.
Great, thank you guys.
Thanks.
All right, if there are no more questions, I'll continue. I'm going to provide next just a brief overview of the planning history of the Vandoorne TSA. And the Vandoorne TSA was the result of Fairfax Planning Horizons process in 1990 and 1991, when a special task force conducted a study and made recommendations for the creation of the Vandoorne transit station area in anticipation of the opening of the Vandoorne metro station. The recommendation acknowledged the predominance of existing industrial uses, but envisioned future uses that would include a mixture of medium to high density office, retail, residential, and hotel uses to take advantage of the proximity to the Vandoorne metro station. The plan recommendations for the TSA were updated in 2000 to provide additional guidance for access and development intensities that would encourage transit use, provide an appropriate transition to existing residential neighborhoods, and address environmental concerns. Next, we're going to move on to the site at 5605 Oakwood Road. Currently, this is one of the subject properties that we were just previously discussing, and it was rezoned in 1994 to the PDC district. This rezoning approved 850,000 square feet of office at a 1.1 FAR at the time, and 5 buildings ranging in height from 55 to 88 feet, and served by structured parking. It should be noted that after the rezoning, 5.6 acres of this site was conveyed to the South Vandoorne Street and Capitol Beltway interchange improvement and subsequent realignment of Oakwood Road, which is this is the ramp right here that the land was conveyed for. This conveyance reduced the size of the property from 17.7 acres to 12.5 acres, and subsequently, the FAR for this property increased from 1.1 to 1.62. Now, the size of the proposed development, of course, did not change. However, because the size of the site was reduced, this resulted in an increase in FAR. Now, I guess my question is, does everyone understand how this conveyance of land for the interchange improvement changed the effective FAR for the approved application?
couple of
Basically-
questions on that conveyance.
Go ahead, Carol.
Was the land conveyed to the county or the state for future potential use in exchange for an increased density, or was there cash involved in the conveyance as well?
Well, because they basically the site was approved for 850,000 square feet, no matter what happened, and because the size of the site was reduced by 5.6 acres, they it increased the potential FAR. I mean, because again, they could still build an 850,000 square foot building with that entitlement, with the conveyance of that land, even though the size of the land was decreased as a result of that. And my understanding of it is also that and Clara, maybe I don't know if someone can correct me if they're wrong, that there wasn't cash involved with the.
There was cash. This is Mike Linsky from planning, because I was looking into this. I mean, there was cash involved, and there was also density involved. So it was it wasn't the normal sort of just, dedicating for density credit. So it was kind of a one-off deal with the board of supervisors and probably lengthy negotiations and things. So it's kind of a little bit of both. David Gill probably knows more about that than any of us. But.
Yeah, this is David and Mike. I appreciate that. I mean, Carol, I think Mike's got it generally right, but there was an agreement with the Board of Supervisors at the time because the board was looking at condemning in order to make those improvements between the owner at that point and Fairfax County. So in lieu of going through the condemnation process, they went through a rezoning process where they fast forwarded this dedication. And so that dedication occurred in 1994 and 95 prior to development happening. Usually it doesn't work that way. Usually it's the other way around. We develop a piece of property and that's the time when we dedicate it. Here we did the dedication first in recognition that those improvements were going to happen regardless and wanted to move forward. Those agreements are all obviously public record, and we're happy to share them when we can provide more detail about our nomination.
Well, and the reason I ask is because my community has as its northern border the properties on the south side of Oakwood. And this comes up frequently at our civic association meetings. It just, I want to make sure I have the right information. And I haven't had a chance since I came back, but I have copies. I spent a day at the county building going through the rezonings back to the 70s. I mean, this property started out as residential, and now we're coming full circle.
Exactly right. Exactly.
To come back to try to make it residential all over again. But it has a lot of concerning exemptions and exceptions and other things that travel along with this property that are disturbing at this particular point in time with respect to the watershed. So
and my hope, Carol, I don't disagree, and I hope that as part of this process, we can put the tools in place to address those watershed concerns. That'd be our goal too, as a nominator.
Thank you.
And I wanted to say, since I think on my screen, we see the whole staff team that's been working on this. David, who will be presenting these Vandoorne presentations, but I wanted to acknowledge Mike Linsky, the Department of Planning and Development, who's really been researching this case and working with David. So they're both available to take your questions and to perhaps come back with some answers if we don't have them this evening. Go ahead, David.
All right, next we'll move on to transportation. The adopted plan for the Vandoorne TSA recommends the expansion of Oakwood Road and Vine Street to 4 lanes of roadway capacity. Additionally, a bridge over the Beltway with vehicular and pedestrian facilities connecting land unit B and D via Oakwood Road and Vine Street is recommended to accommodate transit station related levels of development. above an FAR of 1.0 in land unit B, which we discussed previously. And again, like as I stated previously, it should be noted that the adopted comprehensive plan recommends that there be no connections from Oakwood Road to the single family residential neighborhoods in land unit E. And additionally, as previously mentioned, changes are planned for the South Vandoorne and Beltway interchange. However, at this time, there are no details as to what changes are planned, nor is there funding for such a project at this time. And then next we have, next slide is about Vandoorne Metro Station access. Pedestrian connections between the Vandoorne Street Metro Station and the subject property are, first of all, impeded by the Beltway and the CSX and Metro tracks. You know, again, as stated previously, although the Vandoorne Street Metro Station platform is physically located in Fairfax County, the station access and facilities are located within the city of Alexandria. Access to the station is via shared use paths and sidewalks. The distance to the station entrance from the subject property is approximately a 15-minute walk. However, the pedestrian route to this metro station consists of shared use path and sidewalks that are circuitous and unfriendly to pedestrians, and includes a pedestrian underpass below a Beltway on-ramp, a shared use path along South Vandoorne Street beneath the Beltway, and then several intersection crossings. And then finally, I'm going to also review the Fairfax Connector service, the Fairfax Connector routes that linked to South Vandoorne corridor to the Vandoorne Street Metro stations. Currently, the Fairfax Route 109, routes 231 and 232, and Route 321 and 322 bus lines serve the area. Route 109, the Rose Hill line, connects the Vandoorne Street and Huntington Metro Rail stations on weekdays and weekends. Route 231 and 232, the Kingstown Circulator, connects the Vandoorne Street and Franconia Springfield Metro Rail stations on weekdays. And the Route 321 and 322, which is the Greater Springfield Circulator, also serves the Vandoorne Street and Franconia Springfield Metro stations, and the Springfield Mall Park and Ride. Currently, these routes are pretty much they're aimed. They have the most frequent service during commuting commuting hours and are aimed at serving commuters. So, does anyone have any questions about the planned transportation improvements or pedestrian connections or bus routes that serve the area right now?
Yes, this is Carol Allen. I have one more question. You stated that there's no plan for connectivity from land unit D to the residential portion of land unit E. If you look at the maps with the land unit D showing there are a number of residential streets that are part of Brooklyn Bush Hill that connect to land unit D, and I want to make sure that it applies not just to the properties in land unit E, but to the rest of Brooklyn Bush Hill.
Right. So I'm sorry, the question, so currently, right now, there's no residential connections. The residential connections, I'm sorry, in any of the, beyond the TSA, they currently do not connect to the TSA, the residential neighborhoods to the south.
And this is vehicular connections, right?
But if you look,
distinct from others.
Right, if you look at, there is a path for pedestrian, but if you look at a couple of the streets, they actually dead end into the Oakwood property, and I want to make sure that no connectivity from land unit D to residential applies to all of the properties that abut Oakwood, not just land unit E residential.
Okay, thank you. I will note that. Thank you.
This is Tom Sachs. I had a question. I've lived here for 24 years, and we've been talking about the Vandoorne interchange improvements for as long as I have lived here. The latest thing I heard is there are really no concrete plans, and it probably won't be done in our lifetime. Why do we keep bringing it up if it's not going to be done?
I can try to answer that, and then I'll turn to Tom to see how he answers this question. There are a number of interchange improvements in the Fairfax County Transportation Plan that similarly aren't being pursued. Funding isn't pursued. It's a costly endeavor to remove them from the transportation plan. It's not that we, and I don't, and Tom, I don't know if this would be one of those interchange improvements that we would be interested in undertaking that removal. And so until it's removed from the transportation plan, it's important to acknowledge it. But it does put us in that situation where really that's all we can say is that nobody's pursuing it at this point in time, but it's been there on the plan. David, I don't know if you indicated when that was put on the plan. You may not have.
I didn't indicate that, no.
But you know, Mr. Sachs is indicating that he's been hearing about it for a long time, right?
Yep.
Tom, if you're Tom Burke from the FCDOT, did you have anything to add to that?
No, I think you hit it on the head. There's interchanges. Interchanges are a great example. We have them all over the county, and many of them just are not really on our radar. And in this case, someone at some point determined that the interchange would probably need to be modified or enhanced at some point, and we and VDOT have not gotten to the point of studying that. I would guess if congestion got extremely poor at some point in the future, maybe there would be an effort to identify improvements, but that hasn't happened yet.
Congestion has been difficult the whole 24 years I've been here, so that's not a driver. And I don't understand why it can't be removed from the plan.
It's Supervisor Lusk wanted to authorize a plan amendment to remove it. It's happened in other parts of the county where a supervisor has authorized a plan amendment to remove an interchange, and it's been done, but it does have to be authorized by Supervisor Lusk or the board.
And would it be fair to say, Tom, that it would involve having to pay for a transportation analysis and getting that reviewed by VDOT, since it's a change to the transportation network?
Yeah, VDOT wants to see any major significant change to the transportation network. Removing interchange, and in this case, removing an interchange modification because the interchange already exists. I would assume it would require a traffic analysis, and funding, as usual, would be required to do that study.
Hey, Tom, I was curious, do you know if Alexandria has such a thing on their plan? Because they have more simpler plans than we do for
that's a good
Vandoorne
question.
Street.
I've not checked their comp plan. They do things a little differently in the city. They don't rely quite as heavily on VDOT, so it would be interesting. I don't know, to be honest. I'm not sure if they have it in their plan.
I think that's a good follow-up question. I'm looking at you, Mike Lunstein. Okay.
Yeah, and
okay.
this is Holly Doherty. I would just note that when the Woodrow Wilson Bridge project was done and the Springfield interchange, that Vandoorne was the only intersection between those two projects that was not redone. And, you know, I think it really needs to be updated and modernized to meet with the other interchanges in that stretch of the Beltway.
Holly, you're correct on that. I remember them talking about the bow tie effect because they widened it out at the two ends at Springfield and Wilson Bridge. But then we also added the exit from Eisenhower, or was it Eisenhower? Cameron, whatever they call that exit, got added on since then too. So when they redo the interchange, they have to kind of take that whole middle section into consideration.
And the last thing I heard was that because they raised the bridge deck, it really was modified and therefore didn't need to be modified again, which was garbage. But that's what I heard as an explanation.
So am I hearing a desire to study to determine what the modification is needed, or am I hearing that we should just remove the circle from the plan and leave it as is?
It's a very dangerous ramp. It really needs to be redesigned with a flyover.
Okay.
You know, the people going towards Springfield have a very difficult merge to get on Vandoorne South.
Okay, So I misunderstood earlier. We were talking about removing it. Now I'm getting the sense that there's a desire to study it to determine what could be done to fix it further.
Well, if my comment was, if nobody's ever going to do anything, it ought to be removed from the plan, even though it desperately needs it. Nobody cares.
Comp plan, you could say that about a number of interchanges and improvements throughout the county. I mean,
then they ought to be removed from the plan.
Well, I think that we need to advocate for improvements to it and not give up on it. I mean, we have to, it has to be part of the community infrastructure.
The comp plan doesn't have a time horizon, so these comp plan improvements could be done in 2060. They still need to be in the plan at some point in order to get the ball rolling, but it might not be till 2060. And I'm just throwing that out hypothetically. But I mean, comprehensive plan improvements are not improvements that are going to be done in the next 10 years. There's a wide range of timeframes depending on where you are.
And what we can do is we can go back and talk to our FCDOT counterparts. Tom, we can have a conversation about how we can maybe bring this conversation back to the task force after hearing comments. There was a question in the chat about the pedestrian map, pedestrian linkages map, David, about what the colors meant. I think that was the question from the chat.
Oh, I didn't see that. What was the, it was about the.
Yeah, I don't see any question in the chat either.
I think the chat. Go ahead, Graham.
Yeah, sorry, it was a chat directly to me, but I think it was intended for the larger group. And the question was, what do the colors mean in the pedestrian connection slide?
Right. The blue is shared use path, and the purple is just like a traditional sidewalk. All right, if there are no further questions, I can.
Sorry, this is David Gill. Just real quickly, Tom Burke, is there any discussion or thought or about Hot Lanes extension between the Wilson Bridge and the Mixing Bowl here? I mean, this would be soon the last section of the Beltway that doesn't have Hot Lanes, and I can't imagine that that's not at least being contemplated at some level by somebody.
You're all going to be mad at me, but I'm going to say there are HOV lanes in the comp plan. But to my knowledge, in my almost 12 years with the county, I have not heard any discussion about studying when those HOV lanes or potentially express lanes could be implemented. So they're kind of in that same category of long range improvements that haven't gotten to the point of prioritization, funding, et cetera.
Thank you.
And then David, just so you know, there is one member of the public, Ann Blah, who has a question about Vine Street. And let's see if I can pull her up. Hang on one second. Ann, can you hear us?
Yeah, hi, thanks. I just wanted clarification about Vine Street. It is Vine, if there is another connection between Oakwood and Vine Street, is Vine Street still connected back to Vandoorne at when that happens? Because that would turn into basically a Vandoorne bypass. You'd get a lot of cars driving just to bypass it. It can be such a terrible intersection. On like in the mornings driving north on Vandoorne Street to where the lanes narrow and you go under the Beltway, it gets really backed up. So a few enterprising drivers are going to see that they can go on Oakwood and over the Beltway and then back over Vine Street. So that's going to turn that neighborhood into a bit of a bypass because the traffic really does get that much backed up. I guess my question then would be, to what extent has that problem been considered in the existing plan? And is that maybe something that needs to be updated if there is an overall update to the existing plan?
Yeah, and Tom, as you think about answering that, I think I wanted to say that David talked about how we would be bringing some of the analysis back next week. It wouldn't be the transportation analysis, but what we were planning to, not, did I say next week? I meant next meeting. We did want to have a discussion with the task force about the scope of transportation analysis. So this is, I think we can take that note and bring that to the next meeting about what answers would we expect to get from the transportation analysis that will be a part of this study.
That would make a lot of sense to me. I mean, it looks to me as if it was a good idea maybe when it was originally considered, but it needs to be reconsidered. Also, I wonder about the placement of the overpass. I don't know to what extent has that placement been evaluated, and what is it based on?
So I'm pretty sure that bridge over the connector between Oakwood and Vine was probably placed. Yeah, there you go, at the end of the roads. I don't think there has been any study of, proper location of where the bridge should touch down on either side. And there's a lot of comprehensive plan improvements that have general alignments in the plan map that would need refining in terms of studying where and how the bridge would actually be located and where it would cross.
I could comment a little on the history of it because I thought it was interesting. Because originally, I guess there was an existing bridge of some sort at the end of Bush Hill Road. There was like some kind of connection, and then the plan was always to improve that bridge. So the Bush Hill connector was, and then Oakwood and Vine Street would both be just extended all the way to that bridge for vehicular access. And there was some contemplation of a potential for a pedestrian bridge in the TSA just for pedestrians, but the vehicular traffic and the development of full potential was always based on having 2 access points. So that was sort of the plan, that they would connect on either end to Vandoorne and to that Bush Hill. And then I guess Tom might know more about that bridge went away. I think maybe it was damaged or something in the 2000-ish range. And I guess there's no plan to replace it anymore. So these 2 development centers still needed a second access point. So then this multimodal bridge was put in the plan here to solve both issues, the vehicular and the pedestrian.
Where was that Bush Hill Bridge? I've been living here for 40 years. I don't remember a bridge over there.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the old maps there, I don't know how much of it's sort of like a trail. Maybe it wasn't even there up until
Trail maybe. The other thing, there was a conversation. I don't remember what the overall conversation was about, but there was some discussion about the bridge between Oakwood and Vine being necessary if the interchange with the Beltway and Vandoorne is improved, that it might close off the access from Vandoorne to Vine, and the bridge would be needed in order for traffic to get in and out of Vine Street. Is that still a possibility? That would be the only access out?
I haven't seen any concepts or any, plans that would have shown the interchange improvements blocking the Vine access. I'm not saying that may not have been something that has been discussed in the past, but I have not.
Okay.
I think that was maybe in the plan before the TSA even existed, like way back in the 80s. But then once the TSA was formed, I think at that point there was supposed to be 2 points of access, so it was still supposed to connect to Vine.
Yeah, well, this
but
was a
back then it was just
conversation
industrial
for the last
development,
5
too, wasn't it?
years, but yeah. But anyway, will it all be something that we'll look at, I guess?
We can try to bring back some of that imagery about where the bridge was before too. I think that transportation will be one of those topics that we'll really need to get into depth about, even at the next meeting, I think.
Okay.
So I think, David, you're off my screen. I assume you're still there.
I'm still here, so.
Okay, okay. Well, we wanted to make sure that people understood what was on the ground now, what was in the plan now. So we can move on to the environment discussion.
All right, well, the subject property is located in the Cameron Run watershed. And a portion of the subject property, as you can see highlighted here in red on the map, 5605 Oakwood Road, is traversed by stream tributaries and contains a resource protection area. Now, the comprehensive plan recommends protection of streams within the Cameron Run watershed and incorporation of those streams into the environmental quality corridors. Resource protection areas are designated by the county to comply with the Chesapeake Bay Ordinance. The Chesapeake Bay Ordinance's purpose is to protect local streams that drain into the Chesapeake Bay. Additionally, the entire subject property is impacted by noise generated by the Beltway. The comprehensive plan recommends minimizing human exposure to unhelpful levels of transportation-generated noise. A noise study and plan potential mitigation practices should be reviewed as part of any future zoning application. And finally, too, the subject property is dominated by Arumska marine clay, and any proposed development must include a geotechnical study with mitigation and stabilization measures. And we just provided a brief overview of the environment. Next, future meetings will present more staff analysis of the environmental conditions. But does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, this is just David Gill. I just note too that this RPA mapping occurred after the current plan language and after the existing zoning, especially for land unit D. So, I think figuring out exactly what that RPA is an important part of anything in this process. And as Carol mentioned previously, how we can make sure we have the right tools to protect the watershed is something we're interested in really having a pretty detailed conversation with at a future meeting.
Could I ask another question?
Sure.
I'm not sure where this would fit. It seems like an environment thing. I have a neighbor whose property backs right up to the far east portion of land unit D. And he says that area is currently owned by maybe an auto repair business or something, and that he can see like parts on just left in the property, like an axle or something. I had a house guest actually come across, I want to say, an axle or something. My neighbor says he's concerned because he has a 3-year-old son and he's a little worried about his son just, putting his hands on stuff. But I raised this because he thought this might be a concern if there is redevelopment of that property. There may be some surprises to soil condition or environmental condition of that area. I am not as versed in property development as he is, so I'm a little bit speaking out of my league, but I wanted to raise it since I'm here and I'm available to ask the question. I don't know to what extent that type of problem might impact future development.
I think that's something we can come back on and talk. We can talk about what happens when a property develops, what kind of assessment of the site would be done at that point, especially industrial site. We can bring bring back an explanation of the timing of that, how that happens.
Thanks. Sorry for
yeah, that's a great question. No, and I don't know that we said this earlier on, but at the end of this presentation, really, we are trying to collect your questions and concerns. So it's perfect. Thank you.
Question on the marine clay. Sorry to go back. But this is Leah. You had mentioned the marine clay. Is that inclusive on all this parcel area, not just the RPA?
Yes, that is the whole subject property, all of land unit D.
And really, even the neighborhood too. It's really just this part of Fairfax County.
Right. So have we had any issues of the problems with marine clay and changes that any changes that resulted in the marine clay moving, like we had on Telegraph Road when they improved the Telegraph Road, expanded it?
David, I don't think any were identified by our environmental planners, but we can maybe broaden the scope of this and ask about surrounding areas. Question.
Yeah, but my fear is that if we have any changes that happen in the area, that we're going to have movement that causes a domino effect.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that question. So the question is, if redevelopment were to happen on this site, given the condition of soils in this general area, what could be the impact to the surrounding area? Is that
right?
The nature of the question.
Yeah, you have a lot of housing in the area. What happened on Telegraph Road when VDOT came in and improved it was that the marine clay started moving and houses along the slope there at Telegraph started moving down the hill, and the homeowners incurred quite a bit of cost to help fix that.
Okay, thank you.
The John again, and tagging on what Leah just said, that they had the same problem at Runnymede there at Vandoorne when those went in back in the 90s, that their whole steps and started pulling away because just like that, the marine clay. So this area does have an issue with that.
Right, and a lot of the properties are older, built on flattish land, and if you start disrupting the soil around it, a lot of them weren't built with the same technology that you've had in the last 20 to 25 years that makes this building on the marine clay more stable.
Well, thank you for your comments. We will make a note of it.
Thanks.
All right, next I'm going to move on to the subject facilities, or the public facilities that serve the subject property. Before you is a list of the public facilities that do serve the subject property. Subject property is served by Bush Hill Elementary, Twain Middle School, and Edison High School. Parks currently serving the area are Bush Hill Park, Mark Twain, and Lee District Parks. The subject area is primarily served by the Franconia Fire Station, and the John Marshall Library is the closest library to the subject area. This plan amendment will include an analysis of public facilities, and at a future meeting, we will discuss school capacity and future park needs. Additionally, when there is a specific proposal associated with a specific zoning application, there will be a more dedicated analysis specific to that proposal. So I just want to make sure that you know that this is like a high level view, and when there's a specific proposal, that'll also review public facility impacts. All right, and next I'm going to move on to the subject area, which is the final portion of this presentation, and we'll discuss this as well as the board authorization. The subject area of this plan amendment is highlighted in red on the map and consists of a collection of parcels fronting on both sides of Oakwood Road, and again, an area designated as Land Unit E, and the northern portion of Land Unit E of the transit station area. The parcels are either vacant now or contains various commercial and industrial uses. And again, as stated previously, the current comprehensive plan recommends a base level of industrial and office use up to an intensity of 0.25 for the north side of Oakwood Road and 0.5 FAR on the south side of Oakwood Road, with an ultimate development option of which applies to all of land unit D, that is, for mixed-use transit-oriented development up to 1.0 FAR. The mixed-use development potential should consist. The mixed-use development should consist primarily of office, hotel, retail uses, and the potential for residential use as a mix. And it also has a potential residential use as a mixed-use component, but only if phased to ensure a mix of both residential and non-residential uses at each stage of development. Due to limited roadway capacity and connectivity to transit, the plan limits development of land unit D to the base level until adequate roadway and transit access are provided. And again, the ultimate vision, as we stated previously for the TSA, includes a bridge connecting Oakwood Road to Vine Street in order to maximize the development potential of the larger TSA. Because of the planned bridge connecting Oakwood Road and Vine Street, because of this, the northern portion of land unit A right here is part of the study. And now this portion of land unit E is planned for office up to 0.3 FAR at the base level and 0.5 with consolidation. And no changes to the land use for that portion are planned for part of the study. And next I want to move on to the board authorization. Again, the board authorization, it authorized a plan amendment to evaluate residential mixed use with office and self-storage as secondary uses up to 850,000 square feet for 5605 Oakwood Road, and a residential mixed use including office, institutional, and industrial up to 1.0 FAR for as well as residential, for 5400 5604 Oakwood Road. The amendment will also evaluate limited supported commercial uses and modifications of residential phasing limitations. It will also study the impact of the land use changes on the undeveloped portion of land unit E and its effect on planned bridge connection over Vine Street on the north side of the Beltway. It also review the reduction of non-residential uses as well as the removal of any phasing limitations. Now, staff's primary consideration when reviewing this nomination is its effect on the ability of the remainder of the land unit and the TSA area to realize the adopted plan for pedestrian-oriented and higher density mixed-use development. Other considerations included. I'm sorry about the PowerPoint shifting, but anyway, other considerations include developing residential and self-storage uses into the mix of land uses in the transit station area that may work against the area-wide goal for mixed-use development, if not considered with the context of the larger area. Furthermore, the proposed elimination of the residential phasing condition could effectively result in all residential development on the site if the non-residential uses are not developed, which further conflicts with mixed-use goals of the plan. And finally, the inclusion of self-storage as a secondary use in the site may perpetuate an industrial carriage along Oakwood Road, which is also contrary to long-term planning goals for this area. So I guess at this time, we would like to ask the task force, what are some of the questions that you have or need answered, and when you consider this plan amendment.
Okay, so what I'd like to do at this point is to open this up, and we've kind of had a lot of discussion questions already, which has been fine because I thought it was a very good discussion. But if there's at this point anyone from the public with a comment or a question, this would be the time. So please raise your hand.
Just as a reminder, and just as a reminder to attendees who members of the public that would like to raise a question, you'll just want to put your hand up, click on the participants panel button, and then in the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see a little hand. So if you want to ask the question, you can do it that way. Also, if you're calling in by phone, you can virtually raise your hand by dialing *3. your dial pad, and that'll let us know that you'd like to say something.
I'm not seeing any hands raised. Are you, Graham?
I'm not.
Okay. That being the case, if there's no input from the public at this point, we'll move to the task force itself. So any members of the task force who have anything to ask or any comments, please go ahead.
Does that mean raising your hand or just speaking up?
Well, is that Leah?
Yes, that's Leah.
Go. I see you've raised your hand. I was just noticing as you began to speak, so go ahead. And yeah, I suppose it would be best to raise your hand. But go ahead, Leah.
Okay, so kind of the questions I have with information that I'd like to hear. I live between two of the fire departments, fire and rescue, and they are busy. And I mean busy for call outs daily, multiple times a day. Given the amount of changes that we're talking about adding as far as FAR and residential, what's the break point for having an additional fire department added? Because this area is kind of away from the Franconia Fire Department area, and it can be a choke point to get to, from what I can see. So I'd like to know a little bit more about the load that you would anticipate needing a new fire department nearby.
Yeah, well, any potential development that results from this plan amendment would have to have a the fire department would review the application at the rezoning process.
I understand that that would happen at the rezoning process. What I don't want to have happen is that we approve a load on this land, and as each piece comes in to development, if it does, that we didn't anticipate well enough, given our allowing a large amount of FAR on this land, with an inclusion of another fire department needed.
Yeah, I understand the question. We do ask fire and rescue, we make them aware of these proposed plan amendments. We do ask for their comments, and we can follow up to see what they can tell us about response times. Sometimes it's hard to get comments at this plan amendment stage because they don't have a lot of confidence about when this development might come online. But given that the question's been asked, we can do what we can to pursue that answer, some of those answers for you.
Yeah, I mean, it's about a tipping point, really. If they get another 100 call outs in a course of a week or a course of a couple of days, is that going to overload them? And you can estimate the number of call outs you might be getting in a increased FAR in residential that may be looked at this area.
Got it. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks.
And really, I mean, it's the question that staff has for members of the audience and for the task force. Is there some consideration we didn't mention? Are you thinking about information that you think you would need as you consider this plan amendment? I think the large piece of information that's missing right now is what are the results of the transportation analysis? But that aside, what is the other information, and what are other considerations that that are coming to your mind. We'd like to hear that now as we gather staff analysis, the collective staff analysis from multiple county staff and agencies.
All right, thank you. And as your question gets answered or you make your comment, please take your, click to take your hand down so it doesn't get confusing on this end. I see Tom Sachs next, and then I've also got Larry Dempsey and John with their hands up as well. Go ahead,
Hi.
Tom.
This is Tom. My question is, how can we reasonably amend the comprehensive plan when there's literally no plans and no funding for the connection between Vine Street and Oakwood, which is integral to the redevelopment? It seems to me that we're putting the cart before the horse, and until we actually have the transportation, at least if not in place, thought about, we really shouldn't be doing anything to this parcel. So I'd like to get some more information on what the planning is for that connection.
Again, it's in the plan. We have actually requested funding from the board for the last few years to study the feasibility of the connection. Someone was asking about alignment and how it would touch down on each side. We have not gotten that funding. I'm not sure when we will, but unfortunately, I don't have a positive outlook for you.
Yeah,
I could speak to a little from the plan perspective. I mean, I don't know to what extent it was analyzed at the time, but I mean, Vine Street per the plan requires the bridge connection to develop to 1.0. Oakwood Road, it doesn't quite say that. It just says that there must be adequate transportation improvements. But you have to, I mean, there is like a long-term plan for the bridge, so it doesn't say that Oakwood necessarily depends on the bridge to develop, but Vine Street depends on the bridge to develop. So at the very least, we need to assume full build out that there's going to be a bridge there and not do anything in land unit D or E that precludes it being able to put it there or precludes Vine Street from redeveloping. But as to whether land unit D can redevelop without it, that might be what we're kind of somewhat here to look into, I guess.
Yeah, Mike and Tom, and I know the temptation is to try to answer all these questions. I knew this might not work, that we were asking for the questions and trying not to start answering all the questions right now. But I think that's a central question for staff and for the task force is, what does that mean, adequate transportation? That's currently in the comprehensive plan guidance. How are we to understand that moving forward if we're considering a plan amendment change? And I think the last two folks that have raised questions, that's a part of that.
Yeah.
At the same time, that bridge plan, the plan for the bridge was moved to that location. That's when the sort of option for it to go above 1.0 on Vine Street, and the expectation there was that would require funding, or at least partial funding of the bridge in order to get above 1.0. So that was put in there as like a mechanism to try to get funding. So whenever that developed, the idea would be that they would help fund the bridge. It doesn't say that for Oakwood, but it never was quite, specified what it would require to develop Oakwood. So that's kind of, like I said, that's what we might be here to talk about.
Thanks, Mike. So, and since we're on the topic of adequate transportation, we've talked about the bridge, we've talked about the interchange improvements. Somebody mentioned the pedestrian links.
And there's also the transportation on Vandoorne Street in general, because I mean, any development of this, particularly if we go to residential, will have a more significant impact on the residents already there and all of the other approved residential further down Vandoorne Street into Kingstown. And that never seems to come up. We talk about widening Oakwood, putting a bridge over there, but the major bottleneck, which is Vandoorne, seems to get ignored. It never
So-
seemed to be part of the planning for any of the redevelopment.
To Vandoorne itself, like congestion, Vandoorne itself. And
Right.
I don't know if it was you, I had on my list of what we heard last time, we had heard about, and it might have been you that had asked about pipeline development.
About what?
Pardon me?
I didn't hear what you said.
Oh, other development that you know,
Yes,
may not be on
yes.
the ground now, but may be approved or on its way. You know, sometimes we call that pipeline development.
Right.
And I think that was a question the task force raised last time. They wanted to understand more about how pipeline development gets considered during this analysis.
I tried raising my hand, but it didn't seem to work. But the
Oh.
other thing, similar to a comment that Tom made, we're looking at two applications, looking at a little bit more, but based on two applications for specific parcels of land, looking at rezoning them. And I'm a little bit uncertain as to what the county wants in the TSA. And that, to me, that's a bigger question than just looking at approving rezoning and a different type of development for these two parcels that are covered by these two applications.
I'd like to ask a little bit more about your question. So when you say it's important to understand what the county wants in the TSA, do you mean how the county interprets what's currently in the comprehensive plan?
I guess we've talked about changes, particularly with the pandemic, changes in office. What are we looking for? This was zoned one way, it's looked at another way. Maybe it's changing. There's more than just land unit D and a piece of land unit. There's Olive Vine, and then these other two little parcels. What do we want to see there? Are we going to, is it going to be residential here, industrial there, something else over here, maybe change it later?
Yeah, this would be a good time to say, staff is in the question with you. But the way the process will work out is that we will bring our best thinking about it. It's been part of our analysis, and at some point our preliminary recommendation, and that will come to you so that you can hear that first, before you're asked to come up with your recommendation. But I think at this point we're in the question too. What is appropriate?
Because we've been dealing
I guess
with land
ultimately
unit D
this
for
is what we're
decades.
all about.
That's right. Ultimately, at the other side of this process, we're going to have all the answers. Okay, well, maybe just some of them. Thanks.
So I saw Larry Dempsey had his hand up, but I no longer see it up. I don't know if Larry
my
wanted to
question
ask
was
something.
answered already.
Okay, thank you. Jonna?
Okay, I have a question. I don't want to start a big discussion, but I would like you to bring back the information. I did my first, if you will, comprehensive plan review back in 1990. I think I went through 3-8 Fairfax forward, and they keep changing things. So I don't think this still applies this time, but Leah got me thinking when she was talking about the fire department. As far as I know, and from past comprehensive plans, that might be different now, we can't make decisions based on public facilities needs. We can recommend that this be strongly looked at, but in this state, we can't. Our development is not dependent on, as crazy as that sounds, it didn't used to be. They would figure it out after the fact, is always kind of the way it went. So I don't know what that is now, because if we're still under those same restraints, it kind of affects our wording of what we do. But it's always been that, yeah, we like to see more fire department, more schools, more police, more roads, more everything, but public facilities cannot be factored in to our decisions for these site plans. So, and if you could bring back what the definitive is for now, not what the past was, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Got it. Thanks.
I am not seeing any other hands up. Is there anyone else with any anything to ask or say?
No, but I'm always good for a summarizing comment if there are no other questions.
Go for it.
So what I'm hearing, of course, is that there are a lot of aspects of different modes of transportation that need to be answered when it comes to considering the amount of development, the type of development. I had David, and I don't know if you, as you were taking notes, if you have some of the others, specific fire department information, general commentary on how the task force is to consider infrastructure. Is it just an awareness of what the limitations are of services and public facilities, or is this an opportunity to then think about planning for adequate public facilities? I think those were the big central questions.
I'm also here, I was hearing comments that what is the general vision for the TSA as well.
And then the environmental comments about soil. We brought up the questions about noise. But of course, as expected, transportation rises to the top. I will say that when it comes to pipeline development, we'll also bring back some information about what the city of Alexandria has planned. On their side of the transit station area, we've reached out to them, and we hope to bring some of that too. Let's see, I see some comments. I'll just read this. The bridge needs to be planned and funded. There's a comment. Right, some of the history about how money was earmarked for study of the construction of that connector. I heard that comment before, so we can bring back more information about that. I think that's what we'd hope to just set the table, so to speak, for this plan amendment and make sure we had a shared understanding of what the issues are, what the facts are about existing conditions and what's currently in the comprehensive plan. And next time we'll start bringing more of a discussion that's focused on the proposed change and what some of the impacts are that staff has identified. David, did you have anything else?
I think you covered everything.
Well, if that's it, we're 22 minutes before 9 o'clock. That doesn't happen very often. I want to thank everybody, particularly all the staff members who are with us tonight and gave us the benefit of their knowledge and expertise. All our members of the public who joined us and everyone who asked good questions and made comments. Unless there's anybody else who has something to say, I think we stand adjourned.
Just
for anybody else?
Our next meeting is when, July 19th?
That's correct, yes.
Yes, that is correct.
Yay. Happy 4th of July, everybody. Stay cool.
Literally. Okay, well, again, thank you, everybody, and see you next month.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Good night.